Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, David Carvalho, founder of Naoris Protocol. Welcome to the pod.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
The cybersecurity industry globally is worth 225 billion USD, supposedly to grow over 300 billion by the year 2025, if I'm right, or 2030, something like 12%. How on earth did you get into this industry? Because it seems this is the industry to be in at the moment.
Yeah, well, to tell the truth, that's just like one of the use cases of the Naoris Protocol. My background personally is in cryptography and cybersecurity. So I've been an ethical hacker for 24 years now. I've been global chief security for a number of multi-billion-dollar companies in Europe and also UK, and led a number of large digital transformations also at nation-state level. Been advising a number of countries under the European Union and the NATO umbrella on cyber warfare, cyber espionage, and other cyber-related important things, and also some data protection legislation. And as a researcher on the space, been pretty much focused on the pretty much cybersecurity research in general, but also very much focused on decentralization and cryptography, with quite a bit of focus on quantum, which of course has an impact on cyber, and it's one of the top trends into this year according to Gartner.
Okay,
quantum
let's talk about quantum computing, because that's fascinating to me as I see your little AI camera tracking your every movement. Quantum computing, what exactly is quantum computing, number one, and why do you see it as a threat to cryptography or blockchain as we know it?
So very, very simply, all computers are based in transistors right now, besides quantum computers. So it's like, you have a transistor, it's a 0 or a 1.
Yes.
It started with something very similar to a lamp. It was off, It was a 0, it was on, it was a 1. Right? And you can do logic based on this. And right now, for example, a typical processor, I just bought a laptop, and it's like 220 billion or million transistors. It's a ridiculous number, and it's in a very little space. So we have reached the or almost reached the limit, that the atomic limit to make it smaller and smaller. And so gains are difficult in terms of computing, and that's where quantum computers come in, because they are on the subatomic level. So they operate at, with photons and with other particles, and they are quite weird, but they work. We don't exactly know how they work. We just know they work. And they are not general computing machines, but they are really, really good. So you cannot use one for like playing games or using Microsoft Word.
So it's not available it's not available to the public, right?
You know what? I think there are some that are available to the public. They're pretty useless, because what they can do is basically be extremely efficient at very complex mathematical equations. And since they don't have a state that is 0 or 1, they have all the possibilities, the infinity between 0 and 1, because they're in a quantum state.
Quantum superposition,
That's right. They don't really obey to our laws of physics as we see them. They can be extremely efficient in quote parallel processing in some mathematical spaces that our computers would need to work in a one problem after the other, and problems that would take normal computers maybe a million years, they can be done instantly by a quantum computer. So when we go into the cryptography side of things, that's a purely mathematical problem, and all cryptography in the world is following what's called elliptic curve-based cryptography. So it's basically a mathematical problem to do with like prime numbers. It's really easy to calculate them on one direction, very hard to calculate them on the other. But quantum computers can actually potentially calculate them all at the same time for some, not to get too technical, for some algorithms. And that's where the risk comes, because theoretically, in practice, a quantum computer would be able, with the right capability, to break encryption that would take the time of the universe and all the computing power on Earth to do instantly, right? And that's very scary.
How far away do you think we are from a situation like that happening?
Well, that's looking at the amount of money that's being invested by countries like China and the European Union and the US into quantum computing, which has been about $500 billion in the last couple of years, more than in, I don't know, ballistic missiles or something like that. Then I would say everybody understands in that space that it is an engineering problem, just like putting the man in the moon. It's not like a theoretical problem, like it's there. You just need to throw enough people at the problem and you'll solve it. And so there's a race to do that. There have been a number of leaks coming from various spaces that say that a number of very critical encryption methods that are used for everything in society have already been broken. It's hard to prove this unless you're the threat actor.
Yes.
But I would say if you are, and if you have broken it, you probably wouldn't publicize it, because that's to your advantage to not say anything and just have maximum access for as long as possible. However, we know the problem is there, so there is massive efforts by major, kind of like supranational institutions like the National Institute for Standards and Technology to create new standards that are resistant to quantum computers, that are, mathematical standards on cryptography. And actually, it was just announced in August that these standards were finished, and we're actually applying those standards in a decentralized Web3 space.
So it sounds to me a bit like a space race or an arms race. Whoever gets there first holds all the power.
That's right. Actually, I don't mean to be kind of like catastrophic, but the thing is that the fact is that there is a very, very high probability that in the next 2 to 5 years, tops, there is going to be some sort of quantum singularity.
What is that? What is quantum singularity? What is that?
I'll explain that to you in other terms. You can look at it kind of like as a quantum computer with enough qubits, let's say, that will be able to break all known cryptography, which means that whoever has it, or the country that has it, would have access to all the world's secrets and all the world's data instantly, everywhere, for everything. And that would probably be the biggest unbalancing act in our lifetimes from a power perspective. If you can imagine that, it's an extremely powerful thing. It's bigger than AI. It's bigger than anything else. And of course, you can use AI on top of this, but it is something that we need to strive very, very, very strongly to mitigate.
Something so nuclear launch codes, all that stuff is just there.
Carry on, nuclear launch codes, Swift codes, passwords for anything, unencrypting data in transit of any kind, having access to anything anywhere.
Who is leading that at the moment? Because in the space race was between the USA and Russia, and we all know, I guess we were on the moon, but the Americans won. So who is leading at the moment? Is that
you're right? So at the time it was Russia. Now at the time the Soviet Union and the United States, and in the beginning the Soviet Union was winning, as you know. Yes. With Sputnik, etc., etc.
Yes.
The United States massively overspent them, and the Soviet Union was also kind of like faced with other problems, like, for example, the nuclear incident in what is now Ukraine, in Chernobyl, and things like this that really crashed their economy and other things like that. That made them not be able to compete anymore to a point, and then the US got first to the moon. I think in this area we're seeing the same. So we started with a clear advantage in the Western world, quote unquote, and now, from intelligence sources and also open sources, it seems like it is the Asian side that seems to have major advantages and breakthroughs that are happening all the time. So the race is going to continue, but it is potentially a race for all the marbles. So it's probably the most impactful technology of our lifetimes, and most people don't even realize it.
I wonder if the election in the US, if the Republicans will push this more than the Democrats, because this is something that I think the Republicans would be more concerned about.
I'm curious. I know you're the interviewer, but I'm curious why you think that.
No, but because the Democrats are very tech-leaning, very left-leaning. The tech industry is very left-leaning, right? And it's always like sort of, it's a like la-di-da sort of, And
no, I understand what you're saying, but for example, if you look at Musk, right? He's very right? And he is like probably the world leader in innovation in tech. Like he's probably got the biggest contracts from the US government and so on.
Defense, yes. I think it's gonna get worse.
Critical areas.
Yes.
So that's probably the reason why you mentioned that. So yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. But in the end, it really depends on the advisors that they have and the knowledge that they have, and if they listen to their advisors. I would probably think that there wouldn't be much difference between the administrations. But having in mind that maybe we'll have Musk with his own advisors and having some sort of position in the cabinet or like shadow position, to me that's exciting.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about two features of Naoris Protocol, which is the one is decentralized cybersecurity mesh architecture. What is that, and why is it better than what is currently available?
So basically, Naoris Protocol is kind of like a decentralized infrastructure project that, as part of the capabilities that it brings, and it's one of the reasons for its creation, was to bring decentralization into the real world, so outside of blockchains only.
Okay.
So the point is, let's say you have some device, right? The phone, a laptop, whatever, and you have a bunch of applications there, and you have servers that are communicating with your phone, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And everything that is digital right now, and this is probably one of the biggest issues for humanity. Even the United Nations was having a session a couple of weeks ago about this as one of the biggest risks for humanity, because everything is digitally based and digitally driven, right? And everything is a point of failure to everything else. So every piece of software, every application, every service, every hardware piece, every mobile device, every server is a point of failure to everything it is connected to from a cybersecurity perspective. So once that is infiltrated, the attacker can take over things, move laterally, take over other things, and potentially damage massive infrastructure. So if you think about it, this is it's a huge issue that is it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like how the internet was made. And our objective was to create a paradigm or a primitive, let's say, that would allow for decentralization, blockchain technology, AI, in this case, quantum algorithms, coming together and decentralizing these devices and allow them to mathematically prove to each other that they are in a trusted state. And so the more devices you have, the more complexity of software you have, the more programs you have talking to each other, the more actually validator nodes you have, the harder it is for you to tamper with them. So normally you would have to tamper with just one to take over everything, potentially over time, because of the single point of failure risk. And obviously, we came from a background that was backed from former NATO leaders, and there was very critical kind of like views from a defense perspective and critical, environments like governments and so on into the future around this. And the objective was to mitigate that and make it so that these already decentralized systems that are operating centrally would actually operate in a decentralized way that added resilience to everything, right? It's pretty much kind of like flipping the principle. So the consensus mechanism we have is distributed security that is related to what you were talking about, that allows for decentralized cybersecurity mesh to exist. But in the end, it's kind of like a very resilient mathematical way to prove that everything is operating normally. And if it isn't, then it's not allowed to operate. So it's a different way to approach how systems communicate with each other.
Very interesting.
That is very powerful. If you think about it.
Very interesting. The second one is what you guys call the real-time device validation. And you use it to reduce the average breach detection time. How does that work?
So that is kind of like one of the use cases of Naoris Protocol. There's probably an infinity of them. So in this case, in looking, specific, I don't want to get too technical, but looking specifically at, reports from like the likes of IBM. And so it takes about 277 days to detect an advanced persistent threat on a system. If it is detected. If it isn't, so this is an average, right? And if we're looking about pure mathematics in a highly resilient cryptographic environment under Naoris Protocol, it's very hard for you to hide something if you're trying to do something malicious somewhere, because they're going to be validating and looking at everything else. So you actually need to attack the whole infrastructure of infrastructures, all the whole consensus mechanism, all devices, for you to actually do that in one. And that should reduce the detection time to milliseconds, right? So that's one of the kind of like examples that we pushed together on a couple of academic papers with a couple of universities on both sides of the Atlantic. Okay. But that's just one of the use cases. There's many, many more use cases that are related to resilience, to quality of data, quality of AI, trust of systems, so on and so
on. Last question before I let you leave. What is one of the things that you want to achieve towards the end of the year going into next year? What are some of the goals that you want Naoris to hit?
Right, so like what's next for Naoris Protocol?
Yeah, basically.
So we brought some of the most reputable people in IT to the project.
Yes.
We brought one of the grandfathers of internet protocols as we know it, David Holtzman, for example, that created the DNS protocol for the internet. He actually ran the global internet until the year 2000. We have a lot of other very good technologists, former Microsoft presidents in different areas of the world in the team, and other political leaders and other world leaders. And we want to bring more reputation in. We want to create more use cases for the protocol. We want to create more partnerships with very large, environments and institutions. We are already partnering with IBM and other environments. We're looking to do so with more in other areas, including like space tech and other areas that are very, very exciting for the future. And before the end of the year, if I had to ask for a wish, would be for us to be ready with both test nets out into the world on the Web3 space, and also continuing to run more and more operations that we're currently running, but more and more at post-quantum level, that there is a lot of interest for, but we don't have an infinite team of developers for it. So.
Yes. But also the thing is, like, gearing up for war, right, is difficult sometimes because, and that's how it sounds to me, it's like you're gearing up for cyber war and you're telling people, hey, it's coming. But once it's there, then everyone wants to jump. Then suddenly, it's a crisis. What's your feeling when you talk to people? Do people recognize this as a real and imminent threat?
I think people across the internet understand risks in general. Lately, they have been either scammed or hacked in some way, right?
Yes.
For their crypto or for their bank account, their credit cards or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you receive all the time like SMSs with fake links and so on, right? So there's actually the level of risk that exists in the space has never been higher. It's not going to get smaller. So the more IoT devices and so on, I call it IoT for Internet of Trouble. Internet of Things. But the more things there are, the harder it is to deal with them. It is what it is, man. So the harder it is to deal with them. So kind of like paradigms like ours are going to be necessary. And we want to create an incentivized structure for people to actually get rewarded by participating. Right, so if you have a device that's protected, you get rewarded while you protect others. So it's a win-win environment. So that's what we would say for people in general. But when we talk to countries or banks or central banks or critical infrastructure environments or defense companies, it's a very different story. They are very, very aware of all the risks. And they are also very aware that they need to change, like fundamentally change in many cases. And in most cases, they don't know how. So a lot of our job is to actually explain to them how that could be, and help them from a strategic perspective get there, and give them tools to achieve their own unique objectives, because the risks for a central bank are very different than the risks for a defense industry or a critical ports and rail infrastructure or the government finance department, right?
Yes.
So they all have different problems, so they don't want the same solution. But the outcome is the same. They want to decrease the risk. They don't really care how. And our objective is to help them.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. Fascinating time what we're going into. David, thank you so much for joining me today. If the listeners want to go and connect with you and find out more about Naoris Protocol, where can they do that?
Well, they would go to naorisprotocol.com. We will also have Twitter, Telegram, Discord, choose your poison. And they can just follow that through or from the website. And just pay attention. There's going to be lots of news, and we should be live with our own protocol coming out in Q1 next year.
Awesome. We'll put all the links. We'll put all the links in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. We'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Twisting time, a quantum code fills the air, reaching places we don't dare. Wires hung beneath my skin. Let the static pull me in. I'm alive. I'm alive. Breathing deep, quantum drive, cutting through the great divide. Feel the force, electric tide, taking us to the other side. Fractured light burns my eyes. The star explodes, the old world dies. Gravity fades, I'm floating free. Unchained, I've become the key. Circuits fire, I can't resist. Breaking through the infinite. I'm alive, I'm alive. Breathing deep, quantum drive, cutting through the great divide. Feel the force, electric tide, taking us to the other side. Fractured light burns my eyes. A star explodes, the old world dies. Gravity fades, I'm floating tight, taking us to the other side. Taking us to the other side. No control, no escape. We're bound to every move we make, tearing through the silent night.